Oh, shit. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Culture Shock. My name is Lindsay. If you've never seen me before, I'm a producer here at Town Hall. I make videos. Maybe you've seen my face on Town Hall social media. I do a lot of one-off quick videos on news of the day. But this is my very first show I'm doing here at Town Hall, my very first podcast. If you're seeing me or you're just hearing my voice, we'll have a couple of options here, whether it's audio or video, just to listen to the show and tune in. But this is Culture Shock. This is basically like a summary of everything that interests me. This is going to be a show about politics and news, but also music, sports, and pop culture, hence the name Culture Shock. And it kind of ties into the fact that I went through 4 years of a university. I transferred a bunch, which you'll hear in a little bit. I have a fun story for you about my freshman year. And I came out of college basically more conservative than when I started, hence the Culture Shock. I'm 24 years old. I don't have blue hair, and I'm not a socialist. I wanted to just do a quick little intro to say that I'm very happy that I'm doing this. I'm very excited and thankful that Town Hall is letting me kind of bring some comedy to some pop culture and, politics and news. Without further ado, welcome to Culture Shock. So now that you know a little bit more about me, I feel like it's an appropriate time to finally dive into this story and tell you the first of many college horror stories, and what liberalism can do to your brain. So we're going to dive into my freshman year of college. I'm going to set the scene for you a little bit. I was a freshman in college at a school in Manhattan. That's all I'm going to say on that front. And I know you're probably thinking, Lindsay, why would you ever want to go to New York City for college when you're conservative? That city is a liberal cesspool, and you're totally right. But I wanted to go to school for TV and film, and that was the only place that made sense to me. So I did it, and newsflash, and revealing a secret a little bit early on in the story, but I ended up leaving. I transferred schools a bunch, which I'll get into even later in other episodes. But I did go to New York for a bit, and this is the story of my freshman semester. I lived in a dorm that was an apartment building that was converted into a dorm, so there were it looked exactly like a modern day, New York City apartment. I was in a room. I was one of 3 people in one room, and my suite mates were another group of 3 people. So there were 6 of us living in a small, technically 2-bedroom apartment with 2 very, very small bathrooms, 1 shower. And I only became really good friends with 1 girl out of the 6 of us. Shout out to you, Tori, if you're somehow listening to this. You were cool. You were always cool. You're still cool. And I learned very, very soon on that my roommates, my suite mates, I'm going to use that interchangeably. My suite mates didn't really like to clean, so they would leave dishes piled up in the sink very early on. This is month 1, and I was just okay, that's going to be an absolute problem for me because this is New York. We're not very high up, floor-wise. There are going to be rats, absolutely everywhere. So I tried telling them, I was hey guys, we're living in New York. This is going to be smelly. This is going to be gross. Can you please throw out your food? Can you please wash your dishes? Can you please, just at least rinse them out before you set them in the sink for hours and hours to pile up. They didn't like that I asked them to do that. So, that was kind of strike 1 for me. They didn't like that I was moving their things around in the sink and trying to not have roach or rat infestations. So then in about November, I was sitting in my dorm with my headphones in, eating dinner one day, and my roommate comes yelling into my room. She's Lindsay, and I turn, and there was I thought it was an RA person, an RA from my floor or something in my apartment, in my dorm, and I was what's going on? And she was they smelled weed. So we have to, they're going to search our rooms. I was awesome. I knew it was the suite mate's room because I don't smoke. My roommates didn't smoke. But the girls in the suite mate room did. So 2 months in, we were getting our room searched, top to bottom for drugs, I guess. I remember texting my mom being my room is currently being searched for drugs, not my drugs, but somebody else's drugs. And basically, the other girls were caught with a bunch of with weed and like the little paraphernalia and all that kind of stuff. And we soon find out after a quick Twitter search on their like pages that they were tweeting the entire time thinking that I was like the narc and I narked on them. When in reality, I was sitting there like eating my like noodle bowl, like trying to pretend like I'm not even living in New York because I hated it so much. So they're tweeting saying that their roommate was narking on them and being like a rat. And that couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. I wanted nothing to do with them. I just wanted them to not bring rats into our dorm room. So they're making threats over Twitter. I find out, and some of my friends on my floor who follow them on Twitter found out, saying that, get 4 likes on this tweet or whatever, and I will nair off my roommate's eyebrows who ratted me out for weed. I will repeat that for the people who didn't hear that the first time. They would nair off my eyebrows because they thought that I ratted them out for weed. So they were threatening that kind of thing to me over Twitter. They were making, days after that, they were making very vague but like pointed comments to me whenever I would be in like the common area of our apartment saying like, "Bring it on, bitch." I remember I had to write down all of these things because I had to document in case they ended up harassing me in the middle of the night. I remember I brought my toothbrush in from like the bathroom because I didn't want them like scrubbing the toilet with my toothbrush. And then the icing on the cake is my friends down the hallway who followed them on Twitter told me that one of the girls wrote a letter, like typed up a letter to me, like a Dear Lindsay letter saying like all of these insults about me, saying, "I'm sorry that like you can afford to eat out all the time and don't have to do dishes." And I'm like, that's not the problem. The problem is you leaving like food piled up in the dishes in the sink. But if I'm on your mind that much, then like more power to you, they wrote this entire letter saying I'm from like hick country. I'm from like Philadelphia originally, so like I don't know where that one came from. But then one of the best parts was I find a tweet later from one of the girls, and this kind of sums up where the entire story this was going in the beginning when I said why liberalism is a mental disorder. They mentioned something saying that their sweet mate voted for Trump, and I was like, there it is. You finally said the quiet part out loud, and all of your hate and your anger towards me was because I voted for Trump. And I honestly, like, low-key could finish the story right there and be like, there you go, the end. But yeah, all because I voted for Trump. And because I like to wash my dishes. And because I don't smoke weed. Yeah. So that was like 3 months of material for you. They ended up getting moved out of my room because we had a decent case because they were harassing me and my one friend. Oh, and this doesn't include the one girl who I lived with who wasn't my friend, who used my blanket on my bed to clean up the AC unit that like erupted water everywhere. I'll just like insert a video of that because that just basically also sums up my living situation.
Welcome back! I'm so done!
And no, she did not call emergency maintenance for that. Instead, she used my pink blanket to mop it up. Okay, so we're going to get into a fun segment that I'm really excited for. This is what I like to call things COVID has ruined for me. And this isn't going to be what you typically would expect that COVID ruined for me. These are going to be ones that are pretty personal to me. And you'll see what I mean in a little bit. So I'm just going to jump right in because I'm kind of excited to talk through these with you. The first one is COVID ruined going on walks for me. I don't know about you guys, but all I did during COVID besides sit in my house and eat food was I would go on walks because the gym was closed and all of my workout classes were closed. So all I could do was walk like a 3-mile loop around my neighborhood in Pennsylvania for months. So now when I'm like home or if it's nice outside here in DC, the last thing I want to do is go for a walk because that just reminds me of when I couldn't go to a gym and I couldn't go to workout class and all I wanted to do was do that. But instead I had to go on walks or do those like at-home workout programs. That's ruined for me too. I can't watch like tutorials on YouTube for like ab workouts or like, yoga or Pilates workouts because it just reminds me of during that time during COVID that absolutely sucked. Okay, so the next one's a little bit more personal in a weird way. So COVID ruined this one street, this one road in DC for me. I can't go on Rhode Island Avenue without thinking of COVID, and let me explain. So this was probably about maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, like a little bit into COVID when I was back in DC from Pennsylvania. And remember we had to get like our noses like penetrated and violated for these COVID tests or whatever. I had to go and get one because I was sick. I definitely was not feeling well. And I didn't know what it was, if it was like strep or COVID or whatever. So I went to go get a COVID test from this place that would do like day of, rapid tests. And I'm standing there waiting to go inside this clinic. I walk up to this glass door and there's a sign on it that says like, please wait outside for like a nurse to come out and like greet you. So I'm like, okay, so it's kind of weird. I can't walk inside the doctor's office. I'm waiting outside. She comes out, takes my paperwork, my license or whatever. And I'm like, okay, this is just to like expedite, So a lot of people aren't inside the doctor's office. So I'm waiting outside after she brings me back my papers, and I go to follow her back into the office, right? I'm like, okay, here we go. Time to get my nostrils like poked, my throat swabbed or whatever. And she stops me and she goes, no, you can wait out here. And I'm like, I can wait out here. Okay. What am I going to do my COVID test on the side of Rhode Island Avenue? Yeah, I was. That's exactly what happened. She walked out with like the 2 swabs, and I just stood there and I was like, oh, we're doing this right here. And by the time, all of this was happening, there was a line forming of people behind me, like waiting outside to also check into this clinic. So I'm waiting outside and she comes back out to me with 2 swabs. And there I am standing on the sidewalk of Rhode Island Avenue getting my nose penetrated by the COVID swab. Yeah, I had an audience for that. That was interesting for sure. I turned around and this poor guy behind me who I started chatting with while we were waiting for the nurse to come back out was like, that didn't look like that was comfortable. And I was like, hey, thank you so much. It absolutely wasn't. And I wasn't really planning on having an audience or else I would have charged for this, All right, another one. The words positive and negative will now forever be tied to testing positive or negative. Like, oh, positive for this or negative for this, or just the word positive and negative. I heard it and it was ingrained in my brain for so long that those words are ruined. Positive isn't even a positive thing anymore. Positive and negative are just both negative to me. Ruined. Absolutely ruined. All right, and on a slightly more serious note, COVID ruined school for me. COVID hit at the very end of my senior year of college, which, I mentally was already not even I was already checked out of college by that point. But it absolutely ruined my graduation. It ruined many other people's graduations. It ruined high school graduations for other people. COVID ruined school for me. And it was funny because there was a point in time right before COVID hit the end of my senior year of college where I was like, maybe I will get a master's. I wanted to get a master's in something with film related, videography related. And I decided right after COVID hit, there is no way in hell that I'm going to be learning anything over a computer any more than I have. I only got to do online, school for what was it, 2-ish months? Not even, yeah, 2 months. I couldn't imagine wanting to get a master's degree over a computer in that world and that climate, No, absolutely not for me. So yeah, that's all I have for you for this episode. I have a story about a broken AC unit and threats for my eyebrows, I guess, and things that COVID ruined for me. Yeah, maybe next time we'll have some more stories about political news, but wanted to give you a little bit of a personal look into me and my kind of vibe for this podcast. So if you're excited, keep your eyes peeled on Town Hall social media. That's where you'll see and hear when new episodes are dropping. But until then, I will see you guys later.
Woo! Dope! Oh my god, I almost broke the table.